Welcome back to the Intersection Podcast. The Intersection is a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation project built for advocates to share how they're partnering to create anti-racist health systems. In recognition of Black Maternal Health Week, we're dropping 2 podcast episodes focused on birth justice. Our first episode focuses on disrupting the status quo in healthcare using the lessons from midwifery and birthing centers. And our second episode, today we're going to focus on the importance of centering birthing experiences in the fight for birth justice. After you listen, head on over to meetattheintersection.org for more events, conversations, and resources on this topic. I'm your host, Anton Gunn. I'm joined by Ashlei Spivey, Executive Director of I Be Black Girl, a collective action organization that centers Black women, femmes, and girls advancing change across 4 core initiatives: maternal health, economic opportunity, community-led investments, and people power. And Omari Maynard, co-founder of ARIAH Foundation, an organization that supports individuals, families, and communities who experience the devastating aftershock associated with maternal and infant morbidity and mortality. Ashlei, I want to start with you. Can you just share with us a little bit about you and your work?
Well, first, thank y'all for having me. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with y'all and just the experience that you bring in sitting in community. I am the founder of I Be Black Girl, which was founded really organically in 2017, really around this idea, the future that Black women, femmes, and girls, what we dream for ourselves, and what does that look like? And so we are the first and only reproductive justice organization in Nebraska. Yes, there are Black folks in Nebraska, and our work is really around actualizing the future that we want. We have prioritized really our work around maternal and child health, economic opportunity, people power, so building the base of our people, and then community-led investments. And I'm really excited again for the conversation to talk about all of the intersections of how we do what we do and how that lends itself to the impact that y'all are making.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Now, Omari, I want to get your backstory. So tell us about who you are and the work that you do.
Most definitely. Thank you for having me as well. Looking forward to the conversation. It's going to be really dope. My name is Omari Maynard, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I am the co-founder of the ARIAH Foundation. ARIAH stands for the Advancement of Reproductive Innovation through Artistry and Healing. I have a just lived experience in this maternal health space. Unfortunately, I lost my partner, Shamani Gibson, 13 days after giving birth to our second child, Kari. And through that process, we went through a lot of grief, a lot of trauma, but an evolution came, and we created this foundation in order to raise awareness around Black maternal health, around reproductive justice. And the great thing about it is that because we come from an artistic lens, we're having opportunity to touch a lot of different sectors. So we do a lot of work in entertainment, art, healthcare, academic, and then also, of course, politics.
Thank you for sharing your story. I'm sorry for your loss, but happy that you're here in this space with us to share. So Ashlei, I want to ask you, how did you get into this work? Give us a little bit of your backstory, how you got into this work.
I just also want to thank you, Omari, for being here and just send my condolences for the loss of your partner. And then you still advocating as you are navigating that as a family. And I think we all bring our personal lived experience as a reason why we engage and do something. I have always worked in the social sector, so I've done something around like the betterment of Black people. And I've had this very specific experience with the world, and I think that has really guided me. I lost my mom suddenly when I was 25. It was due to a lack of care and response around reproductive care. And I think my process of grief, which I still navigate, led me to lead a reproductive justice org. I didn't have the same words to describe it, like how we are talking now, or what did that look like. But I really spent time unpacking that and thinking about my experience, my mom's, my communities, and really situated my political home and guidepost in the work of RJ and what it means for not just Black women and folks in reproductive bodies, but for Black community. It really is around social drivers, public health, built environment, economic justice, arts and culture. Like, it's all of these things.
That's a good segue. So, Omari, I want to ask you, why is it important to center diverse birthing experiences in the fight for reproductive justice? What does it do and what does it mean to center those diverse experiences?
Yeah, for me, it means everything. In the world we live in, community is lacking. I don't think that we understand how connected our stories are and how similar our stories are. As I'm able to navigate this maternal health space and I get to travel around the country and talk to different people, it's literally the same stories that I'm hearing over and over again. We need to make sure that we're able to support each other in a way that allows me to be able to share my story, will help somebody else share theirs. A part of what I do for my organization is I created a series called In Her Honor. So it is basically a portrait series that I've created where I paint portraits of women who've transitioned due to maternal health inequities in their health care. The idea is to humanize the numbers of maternal health because we hear numbers and it's like, oh, it's so sad, but when we are able to connect these numbers to stories and people, then we can really start humanizing them and identifying ways to change these factors as a community. Because now I have a face tied to the stories that I'm hearing and people that I'm seeing. And these people look like our mothers, they look like our grandmothers, they look like our sisters, so it's so important that we allow that space to happen so that we can, again, change as a collective.
Yeah, very good. Ashlei, I want to ask you specifically about your organization and how I Be Black Girls supports Black women, femmes, and girls at the intersection of gender and race. What are you all doing that's having the biggest impact?
It's such a good question. How much time we got? No, just kidding. So I feel like we have a lot of good initiatives that are really rooted from community. One thing that I want to uplift is that while we are Black women and people led, we have a finite experience, right? And so we want to make sure that we are still curating the solutions and interventions from people that are closest to the work. Because we are experts in our own lives, and it doesn't always have to look like what the dominant system says in terms of an innovation or a solution or how we address this crisis that we did not create and that actually doesn't even have to exist. So I'm thinking about our community-based birth work or maternal mental health. And I think I'm going to start with our maternal mental health. I have 2 kids, and I have a 12-year-old and a 3-year-old, both boys running my house, driving me wild. And with my second, I actually had extreme postpartum depression and anxiety. I think I was in psychosis, and I have all the access. I know the head of the hospital I can call. I do this work every day, and I found myself in a very dark place and not knowing how to get out. So I had a great support system that has helped me navigate PPD and anxiety the last 3 years. And I just happened to post on my social, listen, I don't know what this is, but this is where I am. And literally just on my Facebook, 70 women and moms commented and was like, oh my gosh, I had the same experience and I needed Lexapro, or I didn't want to take antidepressants and I tried this. It was this beautiful conversation. And what came out of that was I felt alone and isolated too. And I'm glad that I just had a peer space to share. And I'm like, okay, we got to do something. This qualitative data is telling me that there's a gap that we need to fill. And so we are actually launching a maternal mental health initiative for perinatal care. We are deep training our community-based birth workers or doulas around how to recognize signs of perinatal mood disorders. We are doing a centering model where we have OBs and midwives and a behavioral health specialist to have the folks be able to lead in their mental health journey, whether it's holistic care or there's some clinical intervention. And then we also are training and supporting partners, dads, people that are part of that village, because it really takes all of us. And it's such a vulnerable, fragile, and precious time. And I think our society rushes people through, right? We don't have paid leave. We got to go back after 4 weeks and 6 weeks in some jobs is a blessing for people, right? But as a society, we're not honoring this space and we see the impacts that it has on our behavioral health. And so I'm really excited being able to launch it because we know that Black women are not accessing mental health supports at the same rate of our peers and that we are seeing higher death rates because of suicide ideation and other things. And so I think this is really a new way to approach perinatal mental health in a way that we're driving the solutions and the care that we need versus someone is telling us you have this and here's what you need.
Wow, that's so powerful. I'm so glad that I heard you mention men and boys and fathers. And Omari, this is a great segue to you. When it comes to centering birthing experiences of diverse persons, particularly BIPOC people of color, I want to talk specifically about Black fathers, what they go through. And so just share about the role of Black fathers and the work that you're doing there.
Yeah, definitely. Like, Ashley, all that work you're doing is really, it's amazing, man. It's so powerful because, you know, as people, we're just going through so many things. And especially nobody wants to talk about the darker things, you know, postpartum and what it looks like for women and also for men. We all going through it, you know, but
Right.
I'm so glad that you're creating community in order to be able to support people in the process together. And it's essentially, that's what we're doing with the ARIAH Foundation as well. We recognize the fact that sometimes people just need permission, and that permission comes from somebody else just exposing themselves to expand themselves, right? To be able to share their story so that somebody could say, you know what, I'm going through the same thing, and this is how we can kind of get through it together, you know? So for us, we're doing many things, but specifically around your question, we created the Luxor Collective, right? So the Luxor Collective is a virtual group that I run. It's every other Thursday. We get together as men and just have conversation. But the dope part is that it was created specifically for men, BIPOC men who have suffered grief and trauma because of maternal mortality, maternal morbidity, or just inequities in the healthcare system, you know, and it's starting to evolve into creating space for just BIPOC men, intergenerational conversations around just really being Black in America and how we can support ourselves through our own individual and collective growth. You know, in addition to that, we have Remembering You, Remembering Us, which is essentially the same thing, but it's for whole families to be able to go through this support service process and heal together. And the great thing about this is that my grief counselor comes to these conversations, my therapist comes to these conversations. We have a Black OBGYN, his name is Dr. Parker, who lives out in Texas. He comes to these conversations. And it's so important that we create this container for these real conversations to happen. And I'm saying this out loud because when we think about Black maternal health, people think about just women, you know, and how this affects women. But honestly, this is a familial conversation. So many things have come out, my experience with maternal health and health care as a man, and how it has made me and transformed me into a better man, you know, a more productive man, a man who really understands how to help connect to his feelings, what my emotional capacity is. It's so needed because when we think about Black men specifically, and we think about maternal health and just reproductive health care, we don't necessarily see ourselves. Like when we go to these doctor's appointments, they're not necessarily addressing us. Even when we're connected with midwives and doulas and other people, practitioners and experts in the space, you know, there's really not much conversations about what the man can do outside of how they can support their partner, which is extremely important. It's extremely important. How do we really help broaden this conversation, because we're not getting the things that we need in the system of care, right? So how do we create our own community and support ourselves through that? And Luxor, Remembering You, Remembering Us, is a couple other things that we do that, you know, creates that space for us.
I really appreciate that. I didn't realize that till my experience of like my partner and what he felt. But I think that's so important. Even in general, I feel like therapy and mental health is taboo in Black community, right? And so then when you add on this layer of this really important journey of you choosing to be pregnant and parent, and then if something traumatic happens, like how do we lean into the supports or like navigate our mental health? And so I love what you're building for partners that are maybe not at the center of this, but absolutely are a part of that village and ecosystem. So I would love to connect on that to see like what you have learned and what has been successful, especially as we're building out those parts, because we don't have to recreate the wheel, and we can absolutely learn from the great impact that you're making with your community now on it.
Yeah, most definitely.
You're illustrating the power of the intersection. This is a place where people connect and build relationships to further the work. I do have a question for you both, and Ashlei, I'm going to ask you to go first. Can you talk about the kind of reproductive justice and birth equity initiatives and training and development that you do? How do we help prepare people before it gets to a dire situation or a difficult situation?
So I just want to center for folks that are listening, when we talk about reproductive justice, and some people have like a standard definition, some folks maybe adapt theirs. We're really tying in like the social and political aspects of life into our reproductive experience. And so that's where the built environment around environmental justice comes in. This is really around our civic engagement. So voting, elected officials, base building, like all of that is key for us in our reproductive justice movement that we're trying to build here. And so when we talk about training and what we're doing, it's really around making sure people have the tools and understanding to advocate on behalf of themselves and the leadership of what they want to actualize. So we tell people like, hey, here's where we stand as IVBG. You may agree or disagree, and we want to make sure that you can still advocate. Ella Baker says strong people don't need strong leaders. And if we are not here as an agency or an organization, can our community still continue on the work? And that's what's important to us. And so we do have a coalition that we put together of cross-movement folks that really lend itself to reproductive justice, that's looking at access to care specifically on the maternal health side, but across the spectrum around reproductive care, access to abortion care, contraceptives, understanding reproductive coercion. Like we talk about all of those things because, again, we want people to understand the full spectrum and not just the siloed pieces and parts. And some of that is difficult, right? Like having conversations about that in community where we're not always given the luxury to unpack those can cause tension, but it's good tension and good discourse. We talk about issues that are going to be on the ballot or that elected officials are holding because, again, we know that policy is really at the core of this and is traditionally weaponized against our communities. And so if folks understand that political process, if they can engage, then hopefully it can be addressing the core root issue versus a symptom. So we can see the change that we want to see versus like, okay, this one piece of the maternal health spectrum is changed, but it goes back because we really didn't really get to why this is actually happening. And so we try to build that in as part of our ethos.
Oh, that's powerful work. And this is holistic. And so to hear the trainings to go from one end to the other informs people in ways that makes them feel powerful. And I love your words around strong people. And that's the goal of it. So, Omari, tell me a little bit around the work that you all are doing. Any training, development, initiatives, education that you're doing, particularly how you help people to utilize art in education and advocacy to deal with the impact of systemic racism.
A lot of work that we do is virtual, and it's virtual so that we can make sure that we have an opportunity to touch as much and as broad of a community as possible. There's a couple of different initiatives that we're doing. Ones that are coming up right now are, we have an organization under ARIAH Foundation called Speak, Move, Change. And Speak, Move, Change, we have a series that we've been doing for the last 2 years called the Reproductive Freedom Train. Just like Ashlei said, and I'm so glad that you said this, Ashlei, like people are doing great work around the country. They're doing amazing stuff. A lot of it is siloed though. And a lot of it people just don't know about. So with the Reproductive Freedom Train, it's a 2-day experience, a virtual experience that we created using AI, and then also the human experience to bring people around the country on this train, very similar to like the Underground Railroad, where we're making stops all across the country to various locations in the past, present, and future. So people who have done amazing work in the reproductive health space so that we understand the history of how we got here, for organizations, community members, tastemakers, and experts around the country who are currently doing work so that people can understand and know what they're doing and how they can connect with them so that we understand what we want our future to look like and how we can actualize it using the technologies that we have present day. And then we have Postpartum Awareness Week. So very similar to Black Maternal Health Week, which allows all these organizations around the country to be celebrated. And Postpartum Awareness Week is a week-long series that we do virtually the week leading up to Mother's Day. So we talk about all things postpartum, from food to housing to fathers and their roles and politics, so all things postpartum all week. And then in addition to that, how we're utilizing art, and I spoke about this a little bit with the In Her Honor series. This is our second iteration of doing In Her Honor on Capitol Hill. First year we did it, we had 26 portraits that we displayed in the congressional halls to, again, humanize the numbers around maternal health, but to also plant seeds so that politicians know, like, these are issues, and the congressional members who are connected to these issues and really want to see these change happen, so that they know what these women look like, they know their names, they can say their names, and they can ask more questions about why, as a community, we're going through these shifts. This year, fast forward a year later, we displayed over 50 portraits. How do we use art as a way to raise awareness? But we're going to sneak in the Omnibus Act, which helps create legislation around supporting families and connecting with the Mamas and Dads Caucus on the Hill, so that there's solidarity, but more importantly, the way to bridge the gap between community and politics, because that's always where we see the issues lie. If we really want to see this change happen, we have to have these laws passed. We have to have these agendas addressed, and we have to have the community to drive it, so that the congressional members understand, like, hey, there's a lot of noise, so now it's time for us to listen. So this is how we're using art as a way to establish all of these things, so that we can, again, see the change and the reform that we want.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Let me add something. You both have talked about the role that public policy plays in and making sure elected leaders understand the ramifications and the things that we need to do to make things better. But we know that the health system is a big part of this. My experience was in a hospital. I don't know about where your experiences were. So my question for you is, what are some meaningful ways that the health system can be a part of this work in helping to move the agenda forward, to making progress on reproductive justice? Ashlei, I'm going to go to you first.
So I'm going to kind of answer your question, but not answer it. Because I think it's a philosophical question for me. Our work is rooted in movement building. And so I go to abolitionist frameworks. And we know that the health system is responsible. However, it was not built for us. Like, literally, the field of obstetrics was built on the torture and experimentation of Black women and Black bodies. And so if that is the origin of this system, can it really serve us as is? And and the work of abolition is truly, I think, is radical reimagination. Like, yes, you dismantle the system, but you need to radically reimagine it in a way where it doesn't perpetuate the same harm. And that is the tension that we as an organization and I as a leader hold. These hospitals get the money. They are responsible. We should hold them accountable, yes. And to me, it's not enough. And they know the things that they have to do, right? The data is clear. How do we radically reimagine care outside of these traditional health systems? So how do we think about midwifery, that literally Black women birthed this country and all of its children, and midwifery has been co-opted. And so how do we bring that back to our care? Or what does it mean for us to own our own hospitals? And is it a hospital in the same way, right? And that's the tension that I'm holding, like, in this work.
And that's a great elevated point to make, is that there is a tension there, and there is the historical context of it all. So I thank you for raising it. Omari, I want to get your perspective on this.
Yeah, my experience was in the hospital as well. We had our daughter, Anari, in the hospital, and we wanted to have an at-home birth for Kari. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. We had to go to the hospital. But I'm saying all of this to say that people have options, and community doesn't necessarily know that they have birthing options. You can give birth in a hospital, it's fine. You can give birth in a hospital with a midwife and a doula. You can give birth at home with the midwife and doula. You can have birth at a birthing center. But the thing is that there has to be a plan, and because of the fact that the system was built on the bodies of Black and brown individuals, we're not necessarily in that plan. So as a community, as an individual, as a family, you have to create the plan. And then, of course, we can talk about access to care. Families not necessarily having the opportunity to be able to pay for a midwife, be able to pay for birth at a birthing center and things of that nature. But there is information and there are organizations that can help support these things, right? So it's all about how much research you're doing. It's all about how much alignment you're putting into place in terms of making sure that your team is solid and people know what their marching orders are and how to be able to best create the best opportunity for yourself as a family and, of course, as an individual who is giving birth. But long story short, definitely it's going to be very difficult to change the system, but at the very least, we need to understand that we don't have to always align ourselves with a system that does not serve us properly. And if we're going into a place where we feel like the care is not up to standard, we can go somewhere else, and a lot of people don't understand that either, so it is really about tapping in and how you tap in and who you tap into.
Yeah, thank you so very much for those answers and exactly what people need to hear about the context of what real justice looks like. My last question for you both is really what keeps you hopeful and what keeps you positive about the work that you're doing? So Ashlei, I'll start with you. What gives you hope and keeps you pressing forward?
Yes, so I want to plug really quick for folks that are listening that want to understand the history of obstetrics. Dr. Deirdre Cooper Owens has a book called Medical Bondage. She's a historian. I am a little biased. She is my board member and sorority sister, so I will say that. And I learned so much from that book, again, of just the context. And so if people want to understand that, I would suggest Medical Bondage is great. Okay, so your actual question, what keeps me excited and looking forward to the work? So I have some friends in Milwaukee, Dr. Monique Liston from Ubuntu Research and Evaluation. Dr. Mo and her team are brilliant. They're Afrofuturists, like doing eval and research work, and just, I love them. And so one of the things as we were starting that they posed to us as an organization in our reaction to this work is a quote from Salt Eaters by Tony Cade Bambara. And the quote says, "Do you want to be well, sweetheart? Because being well is no trifling matter," paraphrased. And what they challenged us was around is that we cannot chart our course and our trajectory based on the harm that these systems cause, that we deserve the space to chart a course based on joy and abundance and what we actually want. And if we want to do that, we have to be serious about it. Like, our joy is not for play. And I think that reframe is what I'm really hopeful about, because it gave me as a leader and our organization permission to dream differently, to challenge systems differently, to take money from funders or not differently, to say, oh no, we're not going to do that work, and you're going to do it because you are the reason that it is this way, so figure it out. Like, it gave us the permission to really release and just be in a different space that really is trying to center joy and abundance in our vision, which I think we don't always get. That, I think, provides me hope, is that I can see a path and I have a guidepost. It's not always clear. It's sometimes a little difficult, but I have that permission that my people gave me to really situate in, which I think has really been beneficial for our movement building.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. So powerful. Omari, what gives you hope and what keeps you positive?
Well, first, if we're plugging books, it's called Medical Apartheid. It's an amazing book, and it definitely tells you the history of how we got here. Mothering the Mother by Dr. Sophia Monroe, an amazing book. And then also Dad's Playbook by Andre Nelson. And Aftershock. If you have not seen Aftershock, go watch Aftershock, Emmy nominated. Amazing film. I think what keeps me motivated is the fact that Black Maternal Health is making more noise than it has over the last couple of years. People are starting to really take a look at what's going on with our community, with our women specifically. It really provides me joy to just being a part of this movement. The work that people are doing around the country is starting to be heard. I pray that is the catalyst that will help create the change and the shifts that we want. In addition to that, the solidarity that I see, there's a lot of amazing people doing a lot of amazing work all across this globe. And when you get into these spaces, the amount of love that is reciprocated it's transformational. People putting in real work, real blood, real sweat, real tears for the betterment of our people, so that we can have smiles on our faces and so that communities and families can be whole and together, and especially in the art and entertainment space, that these things are being portrayed in the way that I see. Because once we start using those type of spaces to create and tell the real stories, then I think we can also see real shifts,
Fantastic. Thank you. Ashlei, Omari, it's been a pleasure to have you on The Intersection. We appreciate your time and are blessed by your work and your effort in leading us in this important discussion. Please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to get notified when new episodes drop. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and as always, make sure to visit meetattheintersection.org for the latest events, conversations, and resources. The views expressed here do not necessarily reflect the views of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. The foundation does not support lobbying efforts, including any activities or communications referenced during this podcast.